Hello and welcome to the C3 Method Patreon weekly Q&A with your host Robert Polenic. Our goal is to educate you on everything health and fitness related with a clear, concise, and customized approach. We want you to know what you need to know and how to apply it in a way that fits you best. Well, thank you for joining me. So our weekly Q&A is part of our Patreon service. If you want to submit a question for the Q&A, you can go to patreon.com/C3 Method and you can become a member. As a member, you get access to these Q&As, and then the library of the Q&A builds more and more over time. It basically keeps every single week's Q&A. So over time, you're going to have a very large database of these videos. We also have nutrition education that includes teaching you how to write your own nutrition programs for yourself or clients if you're a trainer. And then we have training education and training programs. You can find programs for fat loss and shaping, functional athleticism, muscle growth, strength, and then we also do create programs based on requests. The the Patreon service is becoming open to multiple facilities now. I've been partnering with other gyms. So I used to own Brutal Iron Gym, which was a public available gym. I then closed that gym to focus more on one-on-one coaching, virtual coaching, and then changed the business name to C3 Method because it connected better for different business affiliations. The word gym seemed to be competing then if I were to partner with another gym. So it was a little bit confusing. And then I do a lot of nutrition consultations with mental health professionals and different organizations and companies in which the term brutal iron would be a little intense. So C3 Method was the new name, and that has worked out really well. Now, what this service is when combined and used for other facilities, like public facilities, is a chance for us to create some customized online programming options for those members. So if you're a member of a gym and you signed up for the service, thank you very much. So my job is to answer any and all questions you have, provide a ton of training and nutrition education, and then provide customized programming for your facility. You can reach out through a million different ways to ask questions or to request program topics, and I encourage that you do. I really want this to be as much of a one-on-one type service as we can make it. So anything you need, just let me know. You can put your questions on Patreon. Our homepage on Patreon has a questions post that's pinned to the top. You can also direct message me on Patreon, and then you can go to our website, c3method.com, the 3 spelled out THREE, so c3method.com, and send me a message there as well. So I thank you for being part of this community. I hope it's everything you want it to be, and whatever is missing, just let me know and we'll do it. Okay, so let's get into this week's questions. This is the questions for the week of May 19th. Now, we actually have just 4 questions. We had more questions this week that seemed to be better for just a personalized answer. So I answered those with direct messaging. I'm also now converting some of the questions over to the training education videos that you're going to be seeing every week. And I'm going to be putting out some nutrition education videos as well every week. So I'm going to be switching around some of the questions to where you'll get an answer in one way, but you're either going to get a direct answer, an answer in this weekly Q&A, or an answer through the nutrition and training educational videos that will be released once a week. So in one way or another, you're going to get an answer. That's why today's questions, there's only 4 because I answered a couple of the questions in the other methods. So the first question we're going to get into is a nutrition question. It's a little bit long, so I'm going to read through it. If you get a little bored, don't tune out yet. There's going to be some good information at the back end of it. But I really liked the question, the nuances, and I thought it would be fun to have a discussion based on this question. So the first question, can you explain to me the general approach for a contest prep diet? I'm working with a nutritionist. I'm at 12 weeks out from my first competition, and he has me eating zero carbs on non-training days and 50 grams of carbs before training on training days. And parentheses, we do 40 minutes of fasted cardio every morning, 5 1-hour workouts per week. My energy is very low, and I have very intense cravings. I don't see how I can do this for 12 more weeks, but when I asked him, he said this is how contest prep diets are. I've listened to your nutrition video on Patreon, thank you, yay, and your podcasts. So they've listened to some podcasts, the C3 Method podcast, which you can find on pretty much every normal podcast platform and on YouTube. It doesn't seem like you would recommend the approach my coach is using, but I wanted to ask what you thought of this approach. Okay, a lot to unpack here. In general, the initial question, can you explain to me the general approach of a contest prep diet? In a perfect world, I would have some influence and I would have some things set in place before we started the diet. What that would be is that we are hoping to come into the diet being able to maximize the calories that we can consume, in a sense, trying to maximize our metabolism. Metabolism, you can just sum up as how fast and efficiently our body processes the food we eat. What I like to do during the off season, which would be the time before we actually start the prep diet, is to slowly increase the volume, intensity, and training, increase the person's activity that they can do throughout the day, like general step count, and increase their calorie intake. I'd like them to be eating the most protein that we believe is efficient for converting over to muscle tissue and muscle repair, and then as high of calories as we can get while maintaining the body fat levels that are right for that person. Now that is a little bit variant per person. Some people live healthy and happy at 12% body fat. Some people live healthy and happy around 20% body fat, and there's every end of the spectrum from there. What we'd like to do is just to maximize the calories that we've been eating, so that way when we start the diet, we're at the highest calorie count possible. An example of this is if I have somebody who's kind of eating randomly, they're under eating a little bit, overeating a little bit, kind of just inconsistent. And then, on a whim, they say, you know what, I need to get my life together. I want to do a competition. So they would reach out and say, hey, I want to do a competition diet. What should we do? My initial answer would not be as well, let's start from here. What I'd like to do is say, okay, it looks like on some days you're eating 1,400 calories, some days you're eating 2,400 calories, and then some days it's, crazy from there. Let's normalize around, say, 2,000, see how your body responds. Maybe after like 2 or 3 weeks of 2,000, they say they feel good, but they're kind of sort of hungry maybe in the afternoon. So I'd say, okay, well, let's go up to 2,200. So 2,000 to 2,200, and you're training this way, but let's maybe add a couple supersets. Let's add some circuits here. Let's add some more muscle damage, muscle stress stimulus activities into the workouts. Then all of a sudden we do 2 or 3, 4 weeks like that. Now all of a sudden we can move calories up to 2,400. This is what I would want to do in the time before the contest prep. So that way that client, for example, we might start their diet at 2,400 calories, whereas before maybe we would have had to start at 2,000. Why that's important is eventually, throughout the course of the diet, you want to create a caloric deficit that is enough to promote the body having to burn off some stored body fat for energy, but not so much of a deficit that the body believes stored energy is super important and it's necessary to protect organs because we're so underfed. We want to feel as though we want to create an environment, essentially, where the body says, hey, you're eating almost what I need. I guess I can give you a little bit, like a little bit of energy to help cover the gap. And then we just want that gap to exist the whole way through the prep. Now, at first, at 2,400, maybe the body, maybe it really only needs, well, let's say 2,400. So we established 2,400 as like their healthy, before we started the diet, amount. So now all of a sudden we start the diet, and I'm just going to use numbers that make more sense for the conversation. These aren't actually the numbers that we would use in a diet. So they start at 2,400, maybe we start the diet at 2,200. So just a 200 calorie gap. The body says, I'll give up some body fat, I'll fill that. So then all of a sudden the body starts to give up some body fat, but it starts to also adjust the regulation of calories it's giving to different processes throughout the body, and saying like, okay, there's that 200 calorie gap, I don't want to have to fill that forever. Let me adjust the way I'm using my calories. So if you're only going to feed me 2,200, I'll adjust down to 2,200. So initially, the body loses body fat while it's making the adjustments. Then eventually it adjusts, and now all of a sudden it's matching our calorie intake. We then would want to reduce our calorie intake. The body then drops some body fat, but again, it adjusts down to what we're eating. So it's essentially a step process where we pull calories down a little bit. That creates fat loss until the body adjusts to the calories we consume. Then we pull calories down a little bit more, the body adjusts again, but while it's adjusting, we lose body fat. So the body adjusting is like a delayed catch-up effect to every time that we adjust our calories. The higher calories we start with, the higher calories we can end with. This is helpful because then we're not so damn starved at the end of it. We don't have such horrible energy levels that we're just like crashed and dying in order to try to get the body to adjust. And then also, as we would bring our calories down lower and lower and lower, and we're getting closer and closer and closer to what is called your BMR, your basal metabolic rate. The closer we have to get to the basal metabolic rate, the less efficient of fat loss occurs. We start to lose more muscle tissue in the percentage of what's being lost, and the body starts to get more grumpy about the process. The efficiency of fat loss happens less and less and less. So all the effort we're putting in is creating less of a change. So therefore we have to put up even more effort, which would be more cardio, more training, more steps, or even a bigger change in the diet in regards to a deficit. So the closer we get to the BMR, the harder the process becomes. So the higher we can start our calories, the further away from the BMR we can start. The easier the process is as a whole, the more lean we can get as a whole, and everything goes better. So that's essentially what we're trying to do during a contest prep, is we pull a little bit of calories out, lose some body fat until the body adjusts. We pull a little bit of calories out, lose some body fat till the calories adjust, till the body adjusts. That's the general approach. Now, I have helped people do competitions where we never did any cardio at all. No, I'm definitely not going to do fasted cardio, but there would be no prescribed, you have to do X amount of cardio in every day. There are, sometimes I do have to do that, and that's just the case in some people based on their lifestyle. Sometimes they're not very active. They might only get 2,000 or 3,000 step count a day, where I have other clients who have 8,000 to 10,000 a day. They're going to be, the 8,000 to 10,000 a day are probably the ones that don't really need any cardio because they're getting enough general movement combined with weight training that we're getting the energy output we need, and that matches what we need to balance the caloric reduction that we want from nutrition. Whereas if somebody's not very physically active, we might want to add in cardio along with the weight training just to push up their calorie usage, and that allows us to maintain our calories a little bit higher during the dieting process. So that's essentially what you're using cardio for, is to mitigate some of the caloric reduction that you need. Now, the balance of that is really individual dependent, and it's on their activity level, their body fat level, their muscle tissue, their intensity of training, the style of training, their experience with training, like how well are they able to really like crush their body, push their body. So there's a lot going on. In this case, it's somebody being 12 weeks out. That's a far enough way, a far enough time frame. You shouldn't be absolutely dead energy and like major cravings. We shouldn't feel like we're going to emotionally and mentally break at 12 weeks out. That's pretty far. I would say that, the last, and this is all very general, but the last 4 to 8 weeks, they're probably going to start to get pretty hard. And then probably the last 4 weeks are going to be, often they can be an experience where you didn't know you had it in you to survive that. And that can be very common, especially when somebody's newer to the dieting process, newer to the competition process. So first time getting this lean, you're going to experience it being very overwhelming compared to it being the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th time doing a competition. So it's not uncommon to be pretty miserable and to feel challenged and stressed emotionally and mentally. But usually that's like the last 4 weeks, not 12 weeks out. It sounds as though the calories being down to 0 carbs and then only 50 grams of carbs on training days, there should be definitely plenty of protein coming in, around 1 gram per pound of body weight, and there should be plenty of fats at this point. So if your coach is using more of a ketogenic style meaning like focusing on ketones and ketogenesis, like as a fat loss driver. This can happen where somebody has like no carb days or 50 grams of carb days. It's not necessary. You don't need to go like keto for a contest prep. It's actually probably more common that people use carbs during contest preps rather than that they cut them out, because it impacts how you feel throughout the day. It impacts training stimulus and like how well you can train to produce stimulus and changes in the body and muscle maintenance, performance. There's a lot of factors involved. So without knowing more, I wouldn't say that the nutritionist you're working with is wrong. I don't know enough details yet to know if that is a right or wrong approach. But it definitely has some red flags. One of the red flags being at 12 weeks out, you're already mentally, emotionally ready to break. That's a little abnormal. I don't know how far you've come. So maybe the coach has really helped you and you started at like 24 weeks out. You've already been dying for 12 and you've lost, 30 pounds already. It might make sense that you're pretty miserable right now. And maybe how much you're trying to lose by the time you get to this show might be questionably too much to try to do in one prep. I don't know enough, but that is an explanation of what I would typically aim for in regards to reducing the calories slowly and slightly and letting the body kind of catch up, starting as high as we can. That way we don't have to go as low as we can, need to at the end. And then how miserable you should feel. I would typically assume that the last 4 weeks are going to be where it really pushes the capacity you thought you had. And from, say, 12 to 4, you're probably going to, not feel great. You're going to be tired at times. Sleep is going to need to be important. You might start supplementing with some caffeine along the way. So there's a general rundown of what my approach would be. I did mention that I wouldn't do fasted cardio. I don't agree with fasted cardio being a good idea. It just creates a ton of cortisol. It buries the body at the beginning of the day, where now all of a sudden you're eating to just kind of mitigate stress, not eating to optimize fat loss. So not a big fan of it. And I've made a ton of podcasts about fasted cardio and how eating to maximize performance actually maximizes the stimulus in our training, which then maximizes the fat loss effect of the training. So we actually want to fuel our exercise. We do not want to fast our exercise. Like, we don't want to starve our exercise. If you are not performing optimally in your workouts, you're not going to get an optimal fat loss stimulus. And then also, when you create a ton of stress in the body by exercising in a fasted state, it's negative impacts on hormones, negative impacts on sleep, negative impact on mood, on recovery. I mean, there's a lot of downsides to fasted cardio. I don't believe it's necessary. And more current research and more current application of people who do contests are showing that fasted cardio isn't optimal and or isn't necessary. You can get away with not doing fasted cardio. Okay, so I think that was some good, helpful information. For this person in particular, we will be discussing in direct email some more details, but I thought it would be fun to share that process and that answer in today's Q&A. Cool. The next question we have is a training question. So, hey Rob, I am a trainer. I have been using the Functional Athleticism program on Patreon. Yay. Have you ever used velocity-based training for your athlete clients? If so, can you describe how you use it, especially if I can't afford a digital velocity measurement device yet? Okay. I have not used velocity-based training for any of my athletic clients. So I've trained clients who are in professionals in like sports, like NFL, Major League Baseball. I've trained Olympic athletes. I've trained high-level D1 athletes. I've trained high school athletes getting D1 scholarships. So I've trained like Olympic athletes, CrossFit athletes, everybody, So I've gotten a pretty good background on sports and athletics. I don't use velocity-based training. The main reason I would say is because I started training people before that was available, and I've found that using the few devices I have gotten to use, it just doesn't. It's not necessary. There's a lot of ways you can tell if somebody's moving something too heavy or too light that you don't need the velocity-based training devices. Are they helpful, and can they give you more specific data along the way and refine training? I'm assuming yes, but I don't believe that it's significant enough. So I've helped everybody in the categories I mentioned get significantly better. They were all very happy. Like one of my athletes, they used to go to the IMG Academy down in Florida, and based on their feedback, we got better results, and it was a better experience in the way I was training them, and we didn't use any of the fancy stuff that IMG had. It was just controlling their nutrition, their training intensity, the training volume, frequency, to match what we needed to get the progressions we wanted. So velocity-based training, essentially what you're looking for is, typically it's a device that attaches to a barbell. And then how fast they move the bar is the velocity of the movement. So if they're doing, like a clean, hang clean, a snatch, power clean, anything like that, is how fast they move the bar is going to be measured. It's measured like meters per second. And then you would say, oh, okay, this person is moving it at this speed, therefore we can add weight. Or they're moving it at this speed, but that's slower than we want, so we need to reduce weight. Now, why would you reduce weight is, if you're working on velocity, there's a difference between absolute strength versus like explosive strength. An example is, I maybe don't care if somebody can power clean, say 315 versus 365. But as an athlete, there's a certain level of strength that once you get to, getting stronger is questionably beneficial, but getting faster at the same strength level definitely has athletic benefits. So if they can clean, maybe they started cleaning 275 and it looked ugly as hell. And we got into 335 and it's looking clean, looking good. And then you're like, hey, look, this looks good. 335 is a pretty good strength level for like your position, your sport. Can we get 335 faster, 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 faster? They're going to probably get more of an athletic turnover, like athletic response on the field or on the court or in their sport, if they can get to 335 faster rather than 335 to 365, then 365 to 385, then 385 to 405. Just because they can clean 405 compared to 335 doesn't mean they're a better athlete. But maybe 335 faster and faster and faster means they're a better athlete. That would be the idea of velocity-based training. Is there's a certain strength progression that's helpful, and then there's a certain strength progression that has diminishing returns. When you get to the point of them being strong enough that any increase in strength is diminishing returns, you can then change your focus to like speed, how fast they can move the weight. And that's going to be velocity-based training, and that would be where those measurement devices are helpful. There's probably apps nowadays where you can just use an app, video the person doing it, and it tracks the end of the bar. So there are some apps, like for example, that track bar path. And when you film it, you can click like where the end of the bar is in the video, and then it digitizes that like kind of pixelation. And then as you play the video, it will track that spot and track the path of that spot. And then that way it tracks like bar path. I'm sure there's ones now that track velocity. I actually don't know of what they would be, but it wouldn't surprise me if they exist. There are a ton of devices that you can get that track velocity that attach via a cable or something to the barbell. So you can certainly play with it if you have access to those things. I don't believe it's necessary. Usually perceptive feedback, meaning if you watch the athlete do the lift, you're going to see them getting cleaner and faster, cleaner and faster, cleaner and faster. You're also going to see their other accessory lifts, or auxiliary lifts improving and progressing. You're also going to get feedback from them, and they're going to say, holy crap, this feels so much better today than it did, last week or 2 weeks ago. So I use a lot of that type of feedback rather than velocity-based training. If I had one of the devices, would I use it? Probably as like a secondarily, just double checking if what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing from the athlete is being reinforced in the data. But I would never, take the data over what I'm seeing with my eyes or what my athlete is telling me. So if the athlete moves something, and say they move it like faster, like the velocity-based training device says it's faster, and I said, how'd that feel? And they're like, kind of like felt like crap today. I didn't feel connected with it. I'm not going to be like, well, you moved it faster, so let's add weight. No, if they didn't feel good with it, we're going to address that, figure that out first. But it does then maybe help me know, okay, maybe it's a recovery factor, maybe it's a lifestyle factor, because clearly their performance is good. So maybe I need to look at sleep, maybe I need to look at nutrition, maybe I need to look at stress. Are they dealing with any contracts issues, sport issues, or, relationship issues? We might want to look into that. So it can help guide what you look at. I seem to be probably coming across as negative towards them. I would say that I'm more so indifferent. If I used it more often, would I probably learn to love it in different nuances, different ways? Yes. But would it ever supersede what I see with my eyes and what I get from the feedback with the athlete and tracking all of the other auxiliary lifts? No. I'm definitely going to take that data over the velocity-based data. Okay. Next question we have is a mindset question, which I really liked. The question is, when pushing for a goal, whether it's a diet or otherwise, how do you know if you're doing too much or not enough? I am always worried I'm not pushing myself hard enough. Welcome to being a type A personality, and welcome to the rest of the group, because I'm sure everybody else feels that way. But my family and friends all tell me I'm doing too much. Okay, a lot to unpack. The general answer is you. Well, this isn't always true. I was about to say you more than your family and friends do, but that's not always true. And what I mean by that is they might be seeing some things that you're biased to. We often, when we look at other people's lives, we can often be like, oh man, if they just did this, their life would be so much better. But when we look at our life, we're like, I'm doing everything I can. I don't know why this is, going to crap. But somebody else, like outside of us, is like, it's going to crap because you're lazy in this way, or you're not doing this, or, blah, blah, blah. So sometimes outside perspective can be beneficial. So how do you know if you're doing enough? Number one, are you making progress? If you're not making progress, then what you're doing isn't working. So I would change what you're doing, not how much of it you're doing. So don't do more if what you're doing isn't producing anything positive. More of something not correct isn't going to make it correct. So I would make sure that you're making progress. If what you're doing isn't making progress, I would look at maybe trying something different before I would try to do more. If what you're doing is making progress, but it's not enough progress, well, then analyze the hell out of what you're doing and see if there's any gaps, see if there's any holes. Could you be better adherent to what you're doing? Meaning, what's your for calories, what's your window? If your calories are supposed to be between 2,000 to 2,400, how many days a week are you hitting that? If you're only in that target 4 out of 7 days and you're like, I think I'm not doing enough, bullshit. You need to do what you're doing better. You need to get that 7 out of 7 or 6 out of 7. Maybe out of 4 weeks, which would be 28 days, maybe you only missed your calorie target 3 days out of 28. Perfect. So that's what I would want to be looking at is, can I get to 80+% adherence? And usually I'm kind of grumpy towards myself, so I usually aim for around 80 to 90% adherence. Perfect adherence isn't usually possible, so 80 to 90% adherence is what I would look for first. And then if I'm adherent between 80 to 90% for, say, calories, protein, timing and distribution, and then sleep, if I'm nailing those things, and usually I'll throw in hydration. I kind of skip that because I do perfectly fine with hydration for myself. But if you struggle with hydration, I'll throw that in. So sleep, calories, protein, distribution, hydration, those 5 things. Are you at least 80% adherent? If you're 80% adherent, then I would start to look at maybe you need to do more than just that to get the results you want. But if you're not 80% adherent, don't do more of anything, do better of what you're doing. So these are things I would look at is, am I making progress? If I'm not, don't do more. Figure out what you're doing, how to do it better. Maybe there's a different approach that will actually produce progress for the effort you're putting in now. And then if you are making progress, but you want to be making faster progress, look at your adherence level. Then, if you are adhering as well as you can, the idea next is, do I do more, as in add more elements that I should be controlling? Or is this the balance that I can maintain with the other goals in my life? So for example, let's say you have a job and you have a relationship. And you also have this goal that's requiring you to be, 80+ adherent to the 5 factors we just mentioned. If doing more towards your goal is going to negatively impact your work or negatively impact your relationship. You then have to make a decision, which do I want more? Do I want faster progress or do I want this job? Do I want faster progress or do I want this relationship? If you are making progress and you're like, you know what, I could be making more progress, but I like this relationship. I could be making more progress, but I like the way I feel at my job. If I were to start to pull back on my job, it wouldn't be true to me. The level of effort that I want to put in, the quality of work that I'm doing wouldn't make me happy. That would actually start to cause stress. Then I don't want to do more. So when we say, am I doing enough? Am I maximizing my adherence? And am I balancing with my other goals in life? If I can maintain the balance of my other goals, but maybe add a sixth element, or find my training in maybe a more specialized way, then I would look at that. I would consider it for sure. If I can still maintain the other elements. That is now the game that you're going to play is, am I making progress? Am I at least 80% adherent? Can I balance my other goals in life? And if I'm doing those, now I would think about adding more. Now, the more, I would always first look at maybe what I can do, what I'm already doing more efficiently. So are you 100% certain your calories are correct? Are you 100% certain your protein is correct? Are you 100% certain the things you're doing right now are the best they could be? So, for example, with training, programming, if you're following one of our programs on Patreon, it's going to be a pretty damn good program. Otherwise, I wouldn't have wrote it. So that's probably pretty good there. But if somebody wasn't following a consistent program, they were just kind of going off of feel, I would then definitely jump on one of the programs or get like one-on-one programming coaching. So that way the effort you're putting in training is efficient as possible. So that would be the balance I would look for. Am I making progress? Am I 80% adherent? Can I balance my other life goals? And then can I do as much as I can while maintaining those first three? Then what other people tell me, I use it as a kind of like an alert in a sense. So if somebody told me like, man, it looks like, you're doing a little too much, I would be like, well, in what way? Like, what do you see falling apart, or what do you see lacking, or what about it feels like too much to you? And maybe somebody says like, you just look tired all the time, like your eyes are sunken in, you just look tired. I would then say to myself, okay, well, how do I feel? Do I feel super tired all the time, and maybe I'm moody and kind of grumpy and not having a great, emotional, mental health? Then yeah, maybe I'm doing too much. Or if somebody says, oh, you just look tired, I'll be like, I feel fine. Then I'm not going to change anything. If somebody tells me like, I think you're doing too much, and I'll be like, what do you mean? They're like, you've been an asshole. Like, you're a complete jerk all the time. Then okay, I got to look into that, and I got to say, well, that relationship, how much does that relationship mean to me? Do I want this relationship to be better? And maybe I'm not paying attention to my side of it, and now they're raising this awareness that was very kind of them to do. So do I need to pull back in some other areas to be able to give more to this relationship? Or maybe the relationship isn't a great relationship. Maybe it's not a relationship that benefits your life. It's something that existed in the previous version of you, and you're like, you know what? I don't want to let go of who I'm becoming in order to nurture that relationship. So I'll try my best to stop being an asshole. But if what they deem as me being bad behavior is me just not communicating as much, maybe I need to communicate to them that this is the season of life that I want to focus on me. So if you're used to X communication, we're probably going to be now communicating at Y frequency. And I apologize that, it's a bummer if that's not what you want, but it's my life and this is the direction I'm going in. I would love to have your support if you don't mind. But if you're unhappy, I want you to know that, that sucks. Like, I'm not going to change anything. I wish you weren't unhappy, and I wish we could find a balance, but I don't want to reduce what I'm doing to find that balance. That's a tough conversation, right? But that's a conversation sometimes we have to have. I've grown into the person I am in multiple stages of my life. So who I was, at say, 15, 16, 17, wasn't who I was in my mid-20s, wasn't who I was in my mid-30s, and it's not who I am in my beginning of my 40s. So I've been evolving and changing. The people I want to have around me, the lifestyle I want to live has been evolving and changing. So when I was younger, maybe I had more social time, had more friends, and now as I'm older, maybe I have less friends and I have less social time, but it doesn't mean I'm less happy. Maybe it's a better life balance and a better use of my time that I would like. And that tends to be the approach that I would advise clients, and what I would advise the person who asks this question is, if you're happy with your life, that's the most important thing. So definitely listen to what people are telling you, take it into account, double check yourself. But if you're happy with things, keep going. If you're, like we said, if you're making progress, if you're adhering to 80% at least, if you're balancing the things that you deem to be important in your life that you're deciding need to be balanced, then you're doing fine. So if you're out of control in any of those elements, then somebody speaking up and telling you that maybe you're doing a little too much, maybe that's a good kind of alert, and you can analyze that and kind of make adjustments as you feel might be needed. So there you go. Cool. Okay. Our last question is a business question. What methods, apps, and services do you use to communicate with clients? Sending programs, diet and training and feedback, etc. Have you found ways to streamline the work needed without losing the effectiveness? If so, how? Okay. If I were to look at myself compared to what I believe other trainers do, and I do work with a lot of other trainers, over half my clients are personal trainers, I probably do things more of like the old school way, but it works for me and it's very efficient. I manage around 60 people per week, like clients. Like I communicate with everybody per week. That's what I mean by per week. So I communicate with all my clients at least once a week, and I can manage 60 people pretty well in a 40-hour work week. So that gives you the idea of the volume that I'm doing. And then on top of that, I guess, is a Patreon service. And then I get in my own training and, lifestyle and all that other stuff, things like, doctor's appointments and other bullcrap that you got to do in life. But for me, the approach that I use, the way in which I do like my training services, is a 40-hour work week, and I manage around 60 people. Now, the way in which I do that is I deliver the programs via Microsoft Word. I recognize that's old. I know it's old because I did it back when I was like 16, 17, 18 and was sending clients programs. I use Microsoft Word. I'm 100% certain there are new ways of doing it from when I was 16. I'm 41 now, so I'm sure a lot has changed in 25 years. But I like it. Microsoft Word, I like it. It's fast, it's efficient. All of the exercises include links to YouTube videos. So every single exercise I ever recommend has a tutorial video with it. And if I couldn't find on YouTube, I made it myself. So that's why we have our YouTube channel, is because I wanted to start making exercise teaching videos and things. So that was just an organic growth in order to be able to share more information with gym members and clients. So I do Microsoft Word. I recognize maybe that's not the most efficient things. I'm sure like some clients use Excel. I don't really like Excel. To me, it's less intuitive. I don't get to write as much personalization to nuances of the exercise mechanics. I'm sure you can present it in the cells in different ways and blah, blah, blah. But this is the way I like it. So I use Microsoft Word for training programs. One of the benefits of that is I have actually a document that I grow that has an exercise name, an exercise video link. And then the next thing is exercise name, video link, exercise name, video link. It's over 3,000 exercises in a Microsoft Word document. I think it's over 300 pages at this point. It's 3,000 plus exercises. And what I do is I use Control F to find the movement I want. So when I write a client's program, I'm like, oh, okay, I want to maybe start the workout with something that opens up their glutes, because a lot of times people have tight glute muscles and that limits mobility in their hips. So maybe I want to start with something that stretches the glutes. So in my mind, I think, okay, which one do I want for this client? Maybe this client, they're physically fit. There's nothing overly wrong with them. So I'll maybe have them down on their hands and knees, do a cross-legged glute stretch, and then we move into like a thoracic drill and then maybe a plank to work on their core. But maybe the client has knee problems. Maybe they're overweight. And I'm like, they're not going to want to do a cross-legged glute stretch because your thigh has to be kind of where your belly is, and they have a big belly. That's not going to work well. They're not going to want to get down on the ground. So maybe I'll do some kind of glute, activation, range of motion drill that they can do standing or seated. So I'll just type in what I want using Control F. It finds it in the document. I then highlight the name and exercise link, copy that, paste it into their workout, and then I write the sets and reps that I want. That's what I do every exercise for every client, for every program. Probably archaic, takes forever, but I love it. I love it, love it, love it, because I can pick any exercise that I want. Again, over 3,000, and I'm adding new video links to it anytime I think of a new exercise that I want. When I look at apps and services now that automate training programming, I have not found one that has the exercise database the size that I like. One that I looked at and considered using, I had to pay a monthly fee to use, and they only had like 500 exercise links. And I was like, that's ridiculous. That's not enough. That's nowhere near enough variety and the ability to specify what each individual person needs for the way that I want to do programming. So I understand there's other methods out there. This is the method that I like, that has the effectiveness that I want, and I then get to try to do it as fast as I can. So Microsoft Word for programming with YouTube video links. There you go. For nutrition, I use Google Docs, just a Google Doc. I send them the parameters that I want them to use for nutrition. And then if they use a nutrition app, I just have them use whatever app they want, whether it's MyFitnessPal, Chronometer, Macros First, there's a billion others. So whatever they want to use. Then I tell them, like, make a username, make a password, and then whenever I want to give you feedback, I'll just sign into your account, username and password. I'll log into that app, look and see what's been going on, and I'll give you feedback. So I do like a daily summary and say, okay, here's where your calories were, here's where your protein or whatever the person's tracking. Here's the thing that we were tracking or the stuff we've been tracking. Here's where they were for that day. Good day. Or, hey, it looked a little high in this or a little low in this. It looked like at lunch we had this food. Maybe we could have swapped this for this, or we could have actually increased the portions on this, and that would have put us where we needed for protein. So I give them feedback anytime the numbers aren't on. Or if they had a great day and I'm like, man, you freaking, crushed this whole week. You were on point. Great job. So I log into their app, whatever the app is. I would love to, and one of my business goals with my wife Meredith is to possibly build our own nutrition app in the future. There's parameters and ways in which I think it can be done significantly better, like game-changing better. So we are in the process of doing that with, raising funding and building websites and things like that. So we're already doing it, but it's under works. But I have yet to be able to release that to clients yet. So for now, I'm logging into their app and then just giving feedback in a Google Doc. We just call it a journal, like my journal, and then that person has their access to it, my access to it, and then other than that, it's private. So along on that journal with nutrition feedback, they can send me training videos. They can send the videos. They'll either create an account on Instagram, post it to that account. I'll see the videos. They can send the videos, via email. They can send them on Google Drive. They can send them on Instagram. They can send them on Facebook Messenger. They can send them on WhatsApp. I don't really give a crap, any of those things. I'll go on to whatever the person needs for me to be able to see it as long as it's streamlined. I'm not going to jump through 1,000 hoops, but everything I named is all the things that we currently use. So they'll post videos, and then I'll watch the video and then give the feedback on the Google Doc. So the Google Doc has the nutrition feedback, has the training feedback, and then they write questions they want, any questions they have or observations or just comments, and then I answer those questions and write my own observations and comments. And we do that at least once a week. And I do that for all my clients. So all my clients get that feedback every single week on Microsoft, Google Doc, not Microsoft, so Google Doc. And then they get a new program every 4 weeks or sooner, depending on the person's needs, through Microsoft Word. And those are basically the two main methods of communication that I use. If somebody needs me for anything else, they can text me, they can email me. I don't like to do a lot of information, though, on text or email because I can't reference it in the future. So I like to do anything that we might need to reference in the online document, the Google Doc. So that way, if they're like, what should I do with my calories in this situation, and they text me, I will sometimes copy and paste that exchange into the Google Doc, so that way they have that for future reference. That is my preferred methods. I don't believe it's the most efficient way to do it, but it is the way that I am comfortable doing it, in the sense of the quality and effectiveness that I want to give to my clients, what I would expect as a client, and then also balancing the technology that I currently know how to use and do. So if there was something that would streamline my communication by, say, 10% per week, but maybe I had to invest 4 hours into learning it, hell yeah, I would do that, because 10% over the long term of my business is going to make a huge change, like a huge difference. So I'm not opposed to new technology. I just don't know any new technology that's better than what my current technology is. So if you're listening to this and you have any suggestions, you're welcome to throw them out there. I would love to be learning from the Q&As as much as you are. And I actually do learn by having to summarize and create the communication for these answers. So I actually do learn through this process, and it helps me refine what I know, which is great. So thank you very much for participating in the Q&A, because it does help me a lot. But if you have any business suggestions or apps or communication type things that you want to throw out there, I would be all ears or all eyes, since I'll be reading it, if you want to throw it out there. But those are the 4 main questions that we had for today. It was actually turned out to be fun. 1 for nutrition, 1 for training, 1 for mindset, 1 for business. And then the other stuff I answered, like I said, kind of direct messages, and then the upcoming training education and nutrition education videos. Cool. If you have any questions, if you need anything, if you want anything, you can always reach out on the Patreon app. Again, you can post your questions on the main page. There's that questions post that's pinned to the top. You can write your questions in there. Most people send them private message, which is fine if you want to do that. But if you use the community one, everybody else can see them, everybody else can learn from them, so that's kind of great. But if you want to do direct message, that's fine. And then you can also use our website or email me. The website, again, is c3method.com, and email is c3method@gmail.com. Cool. Okay, if you have any questions, let me know. If you like the information we share in the weekly Q&A, please share it with people on social media, share it in conversations, let more people know about the Patreon service as a whole. And then also you can follow us on Instagram and YouTube if you don't already, under the name C3 Method. I post new stuff on Instagram all the time. YouTube has our podcast, and I'm going to be starting a new video series starting May 31st that's going to follow my progress through a 20-week diet. So if you want to check that out, I'll be doing weekly videos showing how I would structure a contest prep diet, the way I do training, the way I adjust my cardio, nutrition, everything. So I'll be taking you through a whole process, talking about the mental effects of weight change. And my whole goal with that is to produce 1 video a week that's a pretty deep dive into what I do all week in order to be able to maximize a 20-week diet. And if the diet goes well, I will hopefully, fingers crossed, knock on wood, be getting on stage at the end of it. So we'll see. So if you want to tune in on that, you can go to YouTube and make sure you click the subscribe button, so that way you get a notification for all of our newest videos. Cool. If you need anything else, let me know. And as always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.